Thank you very much to everyone who stays. We appreciate that the lunch is about to be served, so we wouldn't keep it too long, but we will try to make it as interactive as possible. So my name is Anastasia, and I'm Business Development Lead for Brentwood SciTech. So I cover life sciences across the portfolio, and my role is to strengthen and expand the ecosystem. So the health tech arena is full of enterprising and innovative companies, solutions, and they aim to develop next stage change in their respective fields. So today we're joined by the leaders from the private and governmental organizations from the Northwest, and we will try to explore the trends and opportunities in the field and see where the future of health tech leads to. So I'm joined today by Dr. Dimza Jones from a National
Institute of Health Research, Clinical Research Network, Greater Manchester.
And maybe I will actually just let everyone introduce themselves instead of me saying who people are. So let's start with yourself, that's it.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Dimza Jones. I work for CRN, NHR CRN, Greater Manchester. We are NHS delivery arm of clinical research, and we work across NHS, social care settings, and hospitals, GP practices, and we make sure that high quality research is delivered across Greater Manchester, and we can provide innovative research options for our patient population and tackle our health inequalities.
Then we'll have Martin.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Martin. I'm the founder of GraphMed Limited. We're based at Alderley Park. We're developing the next generation of materials that will prevent the early formation of diabetic foot ulcers.
Catherine?
I'm Catherine Boylan. I'm the Head of Innovation for Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust, or MFT. Innovation within MFT is focused on interaction with industry, co-development with industry, progression of our internal innovation and intellectual property, and increasingly supporting the introduction of new technologies into the organisation.
Victoria.
And yes, so I'm Victoria Betton. I have my own company, people.com. I'm very interested in human factors, as the name might suggest, and I help the NHS innovate around technology. I also have my own startup called Loop, which is its proposition is to help startups get ready to sell to the NHS, so navigating the compliance, regulation and business sort of elements of the pathway to develop a compliant product.
As an ice-breaking exercise, I thought it would be interesting to hear from our experts. Where do you think, or on the level from 1 to 5, where do you think the, how would you rank the level of collaboration between private and governmental organizations now, let's say in Manchester? Okay, that's all. We'll start with
I would say 2.5. I can't quite decide on average, but I think as a Greater Manchester support, we are able to provide through NHS, through CRN, 3.5. I think we are above a national average, because when companies come to us, we will put our hearts, minds, soul, knowledge into to help them, and we are very well connected. We work very closely with our NHS consultants, academia, Midas, Brentwood, and we will do our best to connect you so you get the best option to deliver your research study here in Manchester. And another quite important thing for us is making sure that we offer companies, SMEs, to work with our diverse population of patients and populations, so we have access to patients within NHS. And I think service what we provide, it's above national average, so I would say 3.5. And we still have to learn, and we still have to improve, and we would very much appreciate if you can feedback those who have worked with us, how we perform, how we can improve our service.
Okay, Martin, you're a person who worked with the government organizations.
Yeah, I think you know, the support we've had as a company has been fantastic. It's difficult for me to actually know how that compares with other companies, so I'm probably not qualified really to give you a rating out of 5, but certainly a very positive experience.
Good.
Speaking for MFT, I would say I'd say 4. You know, we're all about collaborating and cooperating with the commercial sector, because increasingly we know that's the only way we're going to get new innovation into the organisation. There's still some resistance. You know, clinicians are still, you know, see the commercial sector. Some clinicians see the commercial sector as, you know, trying to sell them things solely. But I think we're getting there, so I think it's good.
I'll share a personal take, if that's okay. So I'm a social worker by qualification many years ago, and all my family are like social workers or educators, and I just didn't understand the commercial sector at all. And when I worked in the NHS for decades, I was very suspicious of working with the commercial sector. It's been a real revelation, because I didn't think you could create value from outside. I thought you had to be in the system, but it's really hard to do stuff in the system when you need your allies and people operating outside the system. And I think, having joined Tech UK and just spent the last couple of years on the council, it's been really interesting to see I would say quite a maturing of relationships at a strategic level and maybe more at a local level as well. So I think that the views I once held are often shared, and sometimes for good reason. But I think that we do need to all work together towards those common aims, and there's room for industry to provide products and services to help the NHS do what it does well. And it's not always right for the NHS to do that innovation internally. It needs to work with external partners, I would say.
Very interesting. Actually, that leads to my next question, which I think I would address to Catherine. So, what support does NHS provide, and when companies should approach you? Are there maybe any grants? We discussed, previous panels discussed about fantastic funding opportunities available, at least in the region. What companies need to be aware? When is the best time to approach? Maybe are there hot deadlines we need to know about?
So I'll take the first bit of the question first, as in, you know, when should companies be approaching the NHS? I think it's key that companies approach the NHS or whatever their end user is as early as possible. We so often get approaches from companies who've gone a long way down the pathway because they think their technology is the thing, but they haven't actually really kind of spoken to the people, the clinicians or the patients at whom it's aimed. So getting that kind of clinical expertise, that key opinion leader input into the value proposition and the business plan as early as possible is key. And we're, as an NHS organisation, we're always happy to help and have those discussions. Likewise, I think through working with the NHS, we can help you understand what your evidence gaps are and work with you to, design the studies that you need to address those evidence gaps. And there is a lot of funding that can support those kind of things, certainly around evidence generation, and within the NHS, certainly within MFT, and with the support of colleagues at organisations such as this CRN, we can help you with those kind of grant applications to the NIHR, to Innovate UK. So yeah, I think the key message is get in touch as soon as possible, really.
Okay, and any grants?
So there's rolling deadlines. It would be impossible to say a particular date. If you have seen a particular grant application deadline or call, do get in touch as soon as possible before the deadline. But they typically have a rolling kind of series of deadlines, so it's not the end of the world if you don't.
Okay, I think it's a really interesting. The reason I asked you very first question to scale, I was just curious from the industry's point of view, like where you guys see yourself, so it's very interesting to see quite a variety of answers. So actually, I was in the situation when I heard that, for instance, a technology have been adopted by NHS just across the hill in Leeds, and then it's fantastic technology and people wanted to get access to NHS in Manchester. And then the population seems to be similar. The current solutions seem to be equivalent. Diversity is as high, but it wasn't adopted here. So I think to Victoria, my question is, how can we first of all, maybe increase the speed of technology adoption? Is there a way that, for instance, if it's adopted here, that means hospitals that work in a similar field, or hospital that specialize, in the similar field, or that have similar population, can have a fast track? And also from industry, from the company's point of view, if the company heard no from one hospital, does it mean the dead end? Like, what should they do? Do they need to go to other hospitals? What should they do?
I think, the academic health science networks, of which there are 15 around the country, their purpose is to diffuse innovation sort of in their regions and nationally. So, I think they're the route, if you like. I think that clinicians tend to be frightened of technology. I'm really generalising here, or be a little bit daunted about technology. And innovators outside the NHS tend to be quite naive about the complexity of the NHS. And so what you want is a clinician, someone with that technology expertise, and ideally an academic. That's your sort of holy trinity if you've got a really good team, I would say. If you're interested in non-adoption of technology, then you should read the work of Trish Greenhalgh, who produced a great framework called the NAS framework back in 2017. And she talks about 7 domains of complexity that cause the failure, if you like, for technology to be adopted, and as already has been said, it's largely about people and culture and processes as much as it is about the technology itself. But I think, speaking to your point around engaging with clinicians and end users early, it's not just about developing products and services that people want to use and are useful. It's also about the provenance that you develop, because you've got a story and you've got advocates for your product or service. So I think it's really important to start at that local level and build out, but there is no silver bullet. Unless any other panelist has got one that I'm aware of.
If I might add to that point, excellent points, by the way, that issue of, if it's sold and works at one trust, you can just go to another and get it purchased or procured there. It's a bit more complex, because we talk a lot about adoption, but actually I think what technology providers and innovators need to be thinking about as well is adaptation. One thing might work at Leeds Hospital Trust, it won't necessarily slot in just the same way in Manchester, for example. In fact, there will be different systems it has to engage with. There will be different workflows and clinicians and clinical groups that has to work for. And so I think technology providers need to be prepared that it's not, here you go, buy this, that they should be prepared to work with the organisation around the adoption and adaptation of their technology to a new environment. And there's been evidence, it's well evidenced that innovations will stick and will be enduring if the innovator or technology provider actually works in partnership during that introduction, rather than just selling it, here you go, off you go.
No, very, very good advice. Very good point. Thank you. I think on that, so that's you work with a lot of young startups. Is there a common theme, or are there maybe common mistakes that you came across that companies do, or maybe any tips you would advise,
Yeah, I would start that companies don't know what clinical research network is. After today, if you don't know, please go and Google, or come to me or my colleagues Lauren and Effie at the end of the room. We will tell you about ourselves. One most important thing is that all the support we provide is free of charge. So one common mistake is that companies come to us too late. Come to us when you have an idea about research. We will help you to develop idea. We will help you to develop a protocol. We work with the digital aids, digital systems. We use the local system called Farsight, run by Northwest eHealth, where we can actually look at our local population and we can tell if your innovation would bring benefit, if this is something that we can, test, we can trial across our NHS trusts, then we can help you with practical things. We can help you to write the grant application for NIHR, Innovate UK, like my colleagues at Manchester Foundation Trust. We can physically help you to bring the cost of your study together. ICTs, SOCATs, probably some of you have heard about them. Please don't forget about us, and the support we provide is free of charge. We have good connections within NHS. If we work across 30 therapeutic areas, so we cover more or less everything: mental health, primary care, cardiovascular, surgery, orthopedics. If your innovation are in one of those areas, we can put you in touch in world class leaders, very intelligent consultants that care about population needs, and your innovation will thrive. And and another practical thing is forgetting to put your research study or on our NIHR portfolio that grants you throughout the delivery of the study or support free of charge.
I think some of the points you mentioned now were really highlighted earlier this morning when we spoke about one Manchester approach, that we're all connected. I think it's...
One last thing I remembered, sometimes, sometimes smaller companies, they are afraid of NIHR, that we are scary people, but we are not, we are nice. So if we are actually based in city labs, if you see one of us walking down the Oxford corridor or walking around MFT, we cover Wigan, Rochdale, Salford, in one of those hospitals. If you see our badge, please come and talk to us, because we're very, very approachable, and we do like these face-to-face interactions. So yeah, don't be scared of us.
Thank you, very encouraging.
Thank you.
Martin, I think as a person or the company who is at the early stage, could you share with us actually your experience of, you said quite a positive feedback at the beginning, but maybe some of the points that you thought actually were much easier to do than you thought would be, but also maybe there were some challenges you were not aware of and you wish you learned about them earlier. Maybe any tips for the companies who would like to take, to follow your route?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I break down our development into 3 stages, really, initially we put a team together to look at the market. So I had guys coming in who had experience within the sector. We went down to meet surgeons in Birmingham and London, and what we found was that even with the best connections, we were only getting 10 minutes between their operational time that they had to see us. And then from there, we went on to Alderley Park. We did the accelerator course. Part of that analysis is actually looking at customer discovery, actually trying to work out who your client base will be in the future. And that was largely left to myself, and it was extremely difficult. My background is non-medical, and to actually get the interaction was extremely difficult to get that commitment, if you like. There was plenty of interest in what we were doing, but the actual commitment to do anything with us was extremely difficult. So the real benefit of Nature and Anastasia has been to us huge, really, because it channels us into the right people, and it gave us credibility from day one, that we're not just an SME trying to knock on doors and trying to talk to people, which was difficult in any industry. It gave us a gateway conduit that we could actually use then to find the right people, find people that were interested in what we were doing, and form early relationships to improve our products.
Can I just add a little bit what Martin said about your company? What got us really, really excited was that your innovation was very close to our hearts, because it's about improving patient. And sometimes what companies forget, SMEs are different, but companies forget about patient, they think about profits. But if you put patient at the heart of your innovation, it will work. It will be really, really difficult road, but it will work, because you need to get excitement from the consultants. And usually when it comes to research delivery, innovation, for many of these activities to kind of make them accelerate, we usually use our own time. So it's out of hours, and you know how Dr. Hield works, weekends after 7 p.m. But if you really want to make it progression, you need to prepare for that it's not going to be office hours, and you have to be enthusiastic to get us enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And remembering about putting patient first.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about patient interaction at the end of the day. There's no point in producing technology. I think this has been touched on this morning, really, that there's no point in producing technology for technology's sake, particularly with myself, for coming out not within the sector, to come with a piece of tech. We got told early on, you don't come here with your clever technology, go and talk to the patients, get the interaction with the people who will actually use it and recommend it. And that's really important. And I think, through NIHR, we've managed to do that. We've got somebody on board, Dr. Hield, who's been fantastic, very enthusiastic, and very supportive.
Very good. And think on these positive notes, how we open the, the floor to the questions. Sorry, to the floor. So all the questions are welcome.
I have a question. So my name's Piers. My name's Piers. I'm a partner at Brabner's. I'm head of our tech sector group. But actually, my question is related to people and technology supporting people in NHS. So my partner's an ICU nurse. We heard earlier about how there are vacancies across nursing. And from what I've heard, the reason is because a combination of burnout, constantly increasing expectations on the staff, and somewhere between no and appalling management through to the people on the ground. And I'd be interested to know whether we hear a lot about technology solutions in our health tech solutions for patients, but what technology solutions do you think could be implemented in the NHS to actually better understand the demands on the people who are actually the points of contact with patients? You know, there's lots of wearable tech, there's lots of ways of understanding what people are doing day in, day out. You know, doctors, nurses, those staff. It seems to me that, yes, the NHS should focus on patient-focusing tech, but it would do a lot better to focus a bit more on its people and how tech can help them.
Are you thinking like sort of well-being, occupational health type sphere? Is that what you're thinking?
I think just, across the board, actually, you know, yeah. From where are you actually spending your time day to day, as well as how are you physically and emotionally and mentally coping with the demands of the job.
Okay, I mean, just a sort of comment that springs to mind. I think there's a really interesting tension between supporting staff and surveillance with technology, and we've seen in other sectors surveillance being quite problematic, even if it's implemented with good intentions. So I think there clearly are technologies that can help staff, and there's quite a lot in the occupational health type, staff wellness type sphere. I do think some of the systemic challenges that might just be trying to, I mean, that's all helpful, but we've got the systemic issues around, you know, pay and conditions and those sorts of things that you can't mask. So I just caution that we're making sure that we're getting to the root of the problem rather than just trying to shove some sticking plasters over the top. But having said that, I think technology does have a role to play if implemented well, and just thinking carefully about some of those surveillance issues.
May I just add, from our organization point of view, what we have done, we have automated quite a lot of processes so people don't need to do boring jobs, but we can interact more and think about more creative roles, which kind of lifts the spirit. But then again, there is one big problem. I'm talking because I have a little bit of clinical background within NHS. People don't like change. And, you know, when you want to digitalize process, you will have 80% of the staff that can't be bothered to pick up the change. But in the long term, you know, it will pay off. And I think that resistance sometimes we have to overcome. But that's about changing mentality and culture.
And just to add in, people like change that they're involved in and they have some control over. They don't like change that's done to them, but that's often how things get done. I guess that's where it's challenging.
May I comment as well? So my background, I work quite a lot on the innovation side, but more for life sciences and like biomedical. But this year we did actually international clinical exchange program, and the idea was to do exactly the same. Basically, when clinicians or people who work in NHS have ideas to improve something what they use, as you say, on a day-to-day basis, but they know it doesn't work, it's out of date, it's not sustainable. They found solutions, and we did clinical exchange program with one of the largest hospitals in Barcelona, and we were direct partners. And you know what I noticed? That I think we need to change that mentality and actually encourage clinicians not just to rely on the industry, who actually, I think, not always know what's the problem, but actually encourage them and bring innovations forward. So that's where we are now stepping in, and MFT hopefully will be engaged even more in the next cohorts, you know, trying to support clinicians, maybe allocate 2-3 hours per week or something like that per cohort, you know, to dedicate that time to development of new technologies. Because having a molecular biology background, I have understanding what is the demand what cancer patients might need, but obviously I'm not in the primary or secondary care, so I don't know what is needed. So in this respect, actually people who run
and not just clinicians, I would say nurses, because we tend to forget about nursing workforce, but they have amazing ideas.
I mean, everybody, if there's somebody who works in the hospital and they have ideas and they know how to implement, it's so much easier for them to translate. They can say, this is the problem, that's my solution, let's do it. That's where industry can help. Otherwise, we don't know what's going on behind the walls. We know there are fantastic things happening, but I think that's where we could definitely improve, and it could be the new, the next step. Sorry, any more questions? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I think David was asking. That's fine.
Sorry.
Just a quick one. I mean, we talk about resistance to change and the issues associated with that, and there are loads of principles we can apply, like ADCAR and all these, spiraling circle kind of application processes to resistance to change. But as innovators, could you think of a solution that might actually help people embrace change, especially within the NHS? Is there, I'm not saying there's a quick fix, but have you thought about potential innovations for that?
I think it has to come from patients. You have to go and talk and be open within patients, like Victoria mentioned. You have to work with patients, so making them part of innovation. And but for the companies as well, I think it's incredibly rewarding seeing that you've done that along with your patient.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that, really, to extend that point. So in MFT, we're establishing an innovation hub, which will be all about becoming better at adopting new technologies. And whilst, we recognise that patient co-production is absolutely key, we're very much building in staff co-production as well as that, because, it's as you've kind of alluded to, there's no point trying to push through a new innovation if the staff aren't engaged from the earliest start. So that's something we've been giving a lot of thought to, and it feeds into that culture thing that we've talked about a lot today.
And I think we need to build much more capability around design thinking within the NHS. So the Digital Academy has a whole module on design thinking for CIOs and CCIOs. In NHSX and NHS Digital, you've got loads of user researchers, service designers and so on, and we're starting to see those roles pop up within trusts and with integrated care systems. And I'm obviously helping the Northern Care Alliance with some of that stuff as well. So I think, there's a set of tools there that enable you to do the things you're describing in a really good way that lends itself to digital transformation.
Okay, I think last question.
Thank you so much. Hi, it's Henry from earlier. Thanks very much indeed to the panel. I found that really enlightening. It sounds like you're all doing some really excellent work in terms of helping forging that public-private collaboration. I suppose one question I have, and maybe this isn't a legitimate assessment, I'd be interested in your thoughts, but there's clearly a lot of excellent work happening at that innovation stage. So, as with all tech, it starts with user needs, it starts with the patient needs. Clearly some great initiatives to expose innovators to that data, to the expertise they need to help them understand the landscape, etc. Grants, SBRI initiatives, etc. to access early stage funding. I suppose my question is the stage beyond that. You've got a product, you've tested it, you know it's good, it solves a problem. Maybe you have a sponsor in a trust who's championing it there. I suppose something a lot of tech companies tell us is they really struggle to scale from that point. I've got my foothold, I want to become a significant player across the health tech landscape. Do you think there's enough being done to help people understand fairly mundane things like budgeting cycles, procurement cycles, routes to market? I think it was mentioned earlier this morning, things like who pays for what coming out of the NHSX, things like that, or even supply chains, who are the incumbents? And a lot of what we've talked about today is about sort of dealing directly, but a lot of tech is delivered via the value chain, via the supply chain. So understanding who the partners, who the delivery partners are, etc., is all quite important as well, in my view. So yeah, just a sort of general question: do you think that scaling issue, do you think enough's being done there? Are we confident that we could, because if particularly taxpayers' money is being spent on funding this innovation, we want to make sure it's going to be leveraged across the country, ideally, to improve outcomes.
I remember reading, and I'll get it for you, an interesting study that just shows that in most industries, we're all out of whack in the NHS, so we put a lot of money into early stage innovation, but much less into the adoption and diffusion end. So we're sort of out of kilter compared to other industries. I think some of the stuff you raised around procurement are absolute killers for small companies, but also the really long sales cycle. So, I've seen everything from I think in COVID things got a lot quicker, not always in a good way, but it can be 18 months typically. And even, I've spoken to companies that have been up to 6 years still trying to secure a contract with a provider. So I think there's some very real practical issues around some of the issues that you raised earlier. But I do think we need to sort of shift our focus towards adoption and putting the resource there, I would say.
I would say probably not to date, but that is changing, I think. So certainly as an organisation, we know we've not been great at facilitating that kind of for companies with technologies that serve our needs, but we are changing that. We have money from the Health Foundation, we're setting up an innovation hub. It will make the process that kind of engaging with the business case type of thing to get it into individual hospitals within the trust. It'll make that easier, it'll make it clearer. It will, we're aware that the NHS organisations, and especially large ones, are pretty much a black box really to the outside, and especially to companies. And so we're aiming to change that. I also think there's a lot of things going on at the national level that are helping our moves in the right directions, things like the accelerated access collaboratives and those kind of initiatives, albeit very focused at the moment. I think there's a change ongoing, I think.